We wanted to do a video today for you describing some of the principles of the rainbow body and giving you a deeper insight into this, because this is a really, actually very fascinating subject.
Good night, everybody.
Someone's going home.
Excuse me.
You Jane Foster?
Yes.
Know this man?
He's my intern. My intern.
Place your hands on your head.
Are you watching what's going on here?
And here he goes.
Holy moly! This is happening! This was unexpected.
And look at the smiles.
Oh my God.
The giggles and the laughter and the
This conversation is about rainbow bodies now.
Some people speak of the dissolution of the body into light, as if matter is becoming energy.
The Tibetans have a belief that your physical body is going to reincarnate, that you're going to have multiple lifetimes, and there are a series of teachings that promote the spiritual growth that we're really here to learn. And the ultimate path, apparently, is that you don't need to have a regular physical death at all. You actually transform your body directly into light, rainbow-colored light.
I mean, I've never heard of the rainbow bodies as a description of an event that deals with transition.
The rainbow body is truly fascinating because people have been able to transform their physical bodies into rainbow-colored light, pure light. You actually transform your body directly into light, and your body either shrinks down in size or disappears entirely. And there are a series of practices that allow this to happen. Now, this is very fascinating information that has never been studied anywhere near enough. And here to discuss it with me today is the legend, the classic, Danian Brinkley. So Danian, welcome to the show.
Well, it's good to be back, David. I mean, I am a near-death experiencer. I was struck by lightning in 1975 and was dead for 28 minutes. Took 2 years to learn to walk and feed myself. So I've experienced 4 of these events that we call the near-death experience.
So even on a more basic level, Danian, let's just say this, that your background with your amazing 22 million copy bestseller, Saved by the Light, back in 1993, you put the near-death experience on the map. This idea that when people die, they're not just extinguished into some black nothingness, but there is this whole other experience that we have on the other side of life, when our physical body no longer exists. I think a lot of people don't really know if they're going to continue existing after they physically die. We have a very widespread belief in our culture about death being the end. That's a typical pervasive viewpoint.
Take it from me, they're in for a big surprise. Nobody dies, David. Nobody dies. But this conversation is about rainbow bodies now.
We wanted to do a video today for you describing some of the principles of the rainbow body and giving you a deeper insight into this, because this is a really, actually very fascinating subject. Along with the idea, as near-death experiencers such as Danian have reported, that there is such a grace, there is such a love, there is such a presence of peace and stillness and tranquility and clarity when you go to this place.
All I remember seeing was a big, white, bright white light. So definitely God stuck his hand out there and said, it's not your turn yet. It's not time for you. There's something else I want you to do first before I take you from here. And he saved me that night.
The only thing I remember is I started seeing started seeing the light and started walking towards the light.
And then, out of nowhere, he got his pulse back.
After nearly 45 minutes.
It's pretty awesome to see.
As is Brian's memory of the white light.
There is an afterlife, and people need to believe in it big time.
It was a feeling that I can't explain. It was unconditional love, but it was words. I can't tell you the words. And I'm sorry, but I always act like this because I can feel it again. So, changed my life.
They always say, this is home, this is home. So it appears that what the Tibetans are actually telling us is that the white light that you've seen and felt, and that many others have seen and felt in the NDE, that when you look at that, you're actually looking at the only thing that really exists in the universe.
I agree.
And that light created the whole universe and us.
And you are a part of it. Over there, you are never alone and never helpless.
So how does one go about realizing the spiritual state of peaked enlightenment?
So one of the simplest Tibetan meditations that achieves rainbow body over time is they will...
Now I will tell you yeah? Should I tell you? This is a big secret, you know. So you need to promise that you will never tell anyone. Promise? Promise, raise your hand. It's in my books, you know. Okay. The secret is you all are very in. The secret. Okay. The secret is... Actually, there's no secret. Okay, I will tell you a secret.
Hey, hey, you blind one. Listen, it is the mind that is primary. Speech is derivative, and even body is derivative. Now, this is an absolutely core theme. It's not simply a required belief, it's a truth that must be known for you to set on in this path. If you think something contrary, that's fine, you don't get punished for it, but this path is not open to you. The world is led by the mind. Just generally, in the universe, mind is primary. Okay? Or the ever so often quoted first verse of the first chapter of the Dhammapada. All phenomena are preceded by the mind, issue forth from the mind, and consist of the mind. Clearly that has multiple interpretations. I don't mean to be over simplistic here, but he said what he said. And then we go to the Mahayana tradition. The Buddha in the sutra states all phenomena are preceded by the mind. When the mind is comprehended, all phenomena are comprehended by bringing the mind under control. All things are brought under control. So this is a recurrent theme through all schools of Buddhism, that the mind is primary. When we address the First Noble Truth, yes, there's physical pain, never to be marginalized, but after all, the deeper forms of suffering are not physical, they're mental. The suffering of change, the suffering that goes with just the grasping to I am, it's mental suffering. When you look at the Second Noble Truth, it's mental. It's not brain, it's not genetics, it's not environment, it's not politics. It's the mind, it's your mental afflictions that are at the root of all suffering. When you go to the Third Noble Truth, it's the mind that achieves nirvana, not your body. And you look at the Fourth Noble Truth, and it's all training of the mind. Certainly ethics has to do with body and speech, but above all, it's the training of the mind. So the entire framework of the Buddha Dharma is primarily emphasizing mind as primary.
The beauty of the Tibetans is that they had access to some of the most extraordinary, I hate to use the word technology, but a lot of my colleagues use it, so I would use it provisionally, right, as provisional truth. They had the technology to develop meditative methods that produce extraordinary results on a very subtle level. And they had the contemplative institutions, the great monasteries, and the little hermitages out in the mountains, where you could actually try it out and do it. So they, inspired by what they heard and encountered among Manichees and Muslims and Christians in Central Asia, sat down, got back into touch with their own sources, and we have some of those very early sources, methods, and they carried it to an extraordinary level of development. And in the course of the centuries between Longchenpa, 13th century, and modern times, there have been numerous masters, especially in this Dzogchen tradition, that seem to have been capable of producing paranormal phenomena as a fruit of their deep contemplative practice. And they devised methods that went beyond the simple teachings of the early Dzogchen texts to make available to a wider public of practitioners those methods that would sensitize the human person to the potential of the human person. So that's where we get to the very strong positions that we hear expressed among the Nyingma practitioners. What we are doing is different from what the others are doing. And the others will also say, what you are doing is not even Buddhism. Okay? I mean, the controversy and the polemics are very strong on this. So I think my book attempts also to illustrate the impulses that lie behind the growth and development of some of the most sophisticated practices in Tibetan Buddhism, and helps us understand why some of them seem rather odd even to other Buddhists. We'll leave it at that for now.
Now, I want to talk about the second Buddha, Padmasambhava, because Padmasambhava came in and improved upon the teachings of the Buddha that, you know, allowed for this rainbow body graduation to start to happen. So in the mainstream Tibetan lore, Padmasambhava did not have a mother or a father. They say that he arrived in an egg that came out of the sky. He told them that he came from the cosmos, so he directly stated that he came from outer space, from the stars. And he had remarkable abilities as soon as he arrived. He could do telekinesis, levitation. Now, the name Padmasambhava translates as lotus-born. They also called him Guru Rinpoche and the second Buddha, as I said. The term Guru Rinpoche translates as precious guru. This is an image of Padmasambhava as he would be flying around, because he did apparently levitate. That Padmasambhava, once he started to reach rainbow body, he actually pushed his hand into the rock.
Holy moly!
Outside the cave he was meditating in, and melted his handprint into the rock. Padmasambhava had an interesting case where he instantly transferred into light. It didn't take 7 days. He didn't leave anything behind. There was no body left behind. It happened just in a flash. And so this illustration that you're seeing and others like it are based upon the eyewitness testimony of what they saw. So people saw a spherical aura around him of rainbow-colored light, and it was very bright, and then that was it. He disappeared.
Vortex.
Yeah.
Dimensional shift. I get it.
So I want to go over a couple things about Padmasambhava. First of all, he brought Buddhism from India to Tibet in the 8th century. This was the first time that had happened. He brought it over from India. The indigenous Himalayan religion of Tibet and the area was called Bon at the time. And everybody that was around him saw that he had extraordinary capabilities. He could fly, he had telekinesis, he could do apports, which is manifesting objects out of thin air. He could hear your thoughts and communicate with you telepathically, and that's what's so cool. So he melded the Buddhist teaching with the indigenous religion of the Bon, and this created what they call the Nyingma sect, which is Tibetan Buddhism as we now know it. Padmasambhava spontaneously burst into this rainbow-colored light as the end of his life, as we saw. This was a great surprise and inspiration to all of his devotees.
The notion of the physical body being capable of undergoing paranormal transformation that we would call the resurrection. And the other is an eschatological goal or purpose to the entire cosmic process. Okay? And David Germano makes the case in his dissertation that, in fact, what we arrive at in the 14th century with a genius like Longchenpa in Tibet is the realization that, in fact, a karma-driven universe in which all that we see and perceive driven by prior karmic experiences, which in a certain sense weigh down the base consciousness of the human presence in the universe, can be seen from another perspective as a gnosis-driven universe, a universe that is seeking a cognitive realization, a cognitive or Gnostic realization in which the universe itself is liberated.
Reincarnation itself is actually considered in these beliefs to be suffering, because they believe that to be human is to suffer. And basically, we are all trapped in this crazy cycle and have to keep reincarnating until we somehow break free. What needs to happen is that you need to reach enlightenment and let go of all worldly desires. And when that happens, you can either choose to leave your body here on earth, like supposedly Buddha Sakyamuni did when he reached enlightenment, or you can actually take your body with you. Now, I'm talking about all this because, according to reports, many practitioners of Dzogchen, a study of Tibetan Buddhism, realized the highest attainments of Dzogchen meditation, the rainbow body. For example, supposedly Tibetan monk Khenpo Achos realized this ancient metaphysical phenomenon in 1998 on the hillside above the Lamarap monastery as one of the most widely propagated recent occurrences of yet another Buddhist monk transitioning into this fully enlightened state.
The case of Lamak Bubsar on 2016. Lamak Bubsar achieved lesser transformation, meaning his body did not transform entirely into light and instead significantly shrunk, enough that he could be fit inside a small box. These photos show the small rainbow body, or Jaluchong, after 7 days of continuous practice following the final regular outer breath, ordinarily called death. He was a Dzogchen practitioner affiliated with Kathog Monastery, Kham, Eastern Tibet. He studied with the great Kathog Situ Rinpoche as well as with Adzam Rinpoche's son Adzam Gyos. Moreover, he received teachings from Janyang Khyentse Ladro and Nyashoken Rinpoche, Nalger. There was another one recorded occurrence in 2016, a practitioner that also achieved this transformation. Her name was Tasha Lamo. This is another incredible transformation in modern times. Again, it was a small transformation, meaning the body shrank. Tasha Lamo was the mother of Lopgar Rinpoche, which is one of the Tulku and Nyingma Katok Monastery. In the photo, see her in life, and then we can see a significant shrinkage of the body. So much so that she fits into a small box. This quite graphic picture really brings home the reality of this. It is happening. The last transformation with photographic evidence is the one of Lama Achuk Rinpoche photography that seems to show up some strange phenomena. Rigorous research is still required, but also there is more than enough physical evidence and reliable witnesses to merit more academic research into this subject. This great Rinpoche achieved the rainbow body at the age of 84. Having inspired his disciples in life, his greatest lesson was in depth. His body shrunk from 1.8 meters to approximately 3 centimeters tall, a clear sign of achieving the small transformation, almost the full transformation. Apparently, the picture showing the rainbow light was manifest by this Lama. The lotus was, according to witnesses, only visible in the picture.
So let's talk about this rainbow body phenomenon in Tibet in India. Even though I gave the examples of Dzogchen, these masters were not the only ones to achieve the supreme level of realization. In fact, according to documented cases, an estimated 160,000 people have realized a rainbow body until today.
It's so widely documented in Tibet, we have more than one case of eyewitnesses in modern recent times looking at this.
And a Catholic priest who's probably a scientist.
Yeah, and nobody ever talks about this, and it should be like the most important thing that we're talking about. If if spirituality is not a fake, and if there is an agenda for why we're alive on Earth, and there is a destination, what would you say that agenda is?
Well, you choose to come, which is not as important as that you are chosen. People have to understand, you don't just come into existence when you're a little baby, okay? You don't come into existence then. You've been in existence for so long, and you have earned the right to come to this life. That right has been earned through great deeds. I'm not a gigantic karma person, David, but I believe that deeds are acts of kindness, and deeds grant you higher levels of access in the dimensional realm.
It appears that the agenda that we all have, that we're all dealing with, is ultimately to graduate from reincarnation. There's widespread evidence for reincarnation. There's a lot of great research that was done by Dr. Ian Stevenson, who surveyed 3,000 children in the Middle East and found that there were children who could very accurately remember a past life, and that when those children, when he fact-checked their details, the details came true in, I believe, over 1,000 of the cases. And
I met him.
And also, the really important part being that the facial similarity is there. They look the same as who they were in the previous lifetime. And of course, there's been a lot of controversy online about my own stunning resemblance to Edgar Cayce. His face and my face are very similar. Maybe we'll have a couple images of that up here right now.
There was a whole section about children who had scars or marks that they could tell you where that scarring, and that's what got Ian to really believe.
Ian Stevenson research also concluded that when a person remembered being someone in the past life and they have a violent death, a violent injury, that the site at which the death blow occurred will show up in their next life as a birthmark. That's what you were talking about, is this idea that people get these scars on their bodies in this lifetime, as if the etheric body is somehow also wounded at the moment of like being beheaded, and that this etheric wound somehow then shows up as a physical mark in the next lifetime.
A curiosity to work through, a birthmark. I mean, I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure that all of this is about who we really are, as opposed to who we think we are.
The rainbow body is supposedly an ultimate state of enlightenment when the physical body becomes liberated and transforms into rainbow light or pure light. Basically, people who are able to let go of all their earthly attachments and set their bodies free in the process.
So one of the simplest Tibetan meditations that achieves rainbow body over time is they will look, they'll be in front of a view, so they'll look at like mountains, because there's lots of beautiful mountain views in Tibet, and they'll be looking at this and they are meditating on the concept that they are the sky, they are the mountains, they are the stars. And so your awareness, the awareness that you think with, the awareness that you're meditating with, this is really the key, because it's a meditative practice. The awareness that you meditate with is the awareness that all the universe emanated from, and you want to see yourself as that awareness. Not as separate from the awareness, but that you embody it, and you become the awareness. And apparently, once you have sufficiently become the awareness of the rainbow-colored light that the universe is made from, your body just phase shifts back into it.
I believe that that's highly possible.
So what happens during the realization of the rainbow body? Supposedly, the rainbow body phenomenon manifests itself in many forms. It may be characterized by the total disappearance of the physical body or through its partial transformation. In the case of the latter, the body shrinks dramatically in a way that it can fit inside a small box or casket. The entire process of physical dissolution spans across a week and may eventually culminate into a light body or atomless body state, in which case the body converts into one of light and transcends. It is also said that in the weeks leading to this state of total liberation, some Buddhist masters are also able to perform extraordinary miracles, such as engraving their handprints and footprints on rocks and cave walls. And as much as you may find all this stuff just insanely incredulous, this is very well documented in many Eastern teachings, and in one documented case, hand impressions are visible outside the Asura caves even today in Nepal, traced to an 8th century Indian Buddhist master. In a much more recent case, one of Tibet's most well-known meditation masters, Lama Akyuk Rinpoche, attained his rare type of spiritual realization. It is said that when he passed away at the age of 84, his 5'10" tall body transformed into a figure that was approximately 1 inch in height. Such shrinking of his body indicated his realization of the small rainbow body, a state when one's body does not completely transform into light, but instead contracts significantly. Another case was documented by Catholic priest Father Francis V. Tiso, who documented Gelugpa monk Khenpo Eicho's realization of the rainbow body. He corroborates the sighting of a rainbow over the monk's house a few days before his death. He further describes how the monk's body began to metamorphose after his death, assuming a youthful appearance and turning shiny white, even as it continued to grow smaller progressively. And after 7 days of Khenpo Acho's death, there were no remains of his body. All that was left of his existence was a pleasant aroma and dozens of rainbows appearing as if to commemorate and celebrate the holy monk's attainment of enlightenment.
And the really cool thing for me, Danian, is that we have this monk, this Catholic monk, Father Francis Tiso.
A Catholic priest from the United States named Father Francis Tiso traveled to Tibet, determined to look into the strange happenings taking place after the deaths of monks like the Karmapa and others. There, Tiso documented the extraordinary case of Khenpo Eicho and his death in 1998. As local press reported, recently on August 29, 1998, at Dom Kam Nyak in Azi Rong in Tibet, Khenpo Eicho, 80 years of age, attained physical dissolution. One day at noon, lying in bed without having suffered any recent illness, while in the posture of a sleeping lion and reciting the 6-syllable mantra, he attained Buddha in the primordial basic matrix of alpha purity, his heart of clear light reality perfected beyond the intellect. As his body dissolved into light, his wrinkles vanishing, he seemed like an 8-year-old child with a beautiful complexion. His body gradually diminished in size, and at the end, he attained Buddha. Not even his nails and hair were left behind. It was just like a bird flying from a rock. People nearby have no idea where it might have gone. In other words, Eicho didn't so much die as he just disappeared. This was an example of the ancient phenomenon known as the rainbow body.
The Lama on the left is Lama Norton. He looks like a monk, but actually he's a lay practitioner. He's what you call a nakpa, like an expert in the mantras. And he was one of the close disciples and one of the eyewitnesses that we took. This is a somewhat blurred photograph of Khenpo Ache. His name means the practice of the sound or letter A, long A. And he lived for about 80, 82 years. He was known already as a young man as an extraordinary practitioner as well as a scholar. Brigands were converted to a life of virtue. Animals were attracted to him. He was a man of classic saintly virtue, and he also took on very few disciples. He taught many people, but the intimate disciples were few. And apparently his most intimate disciples were a community of nuns who have a monastery on the bank of the river that is just south of the town of Kanze in eastern Tibet. And some of you may know from newspaper reports that monks and lay people in the town of Kanze in recent years have done self-immolation to protest the oppressive regime. But at the time that we were there in 2000, actually, the situation was relatively amicable. There was surveillance on the part of the Chinese military. The large Gelugpa monastery at the center of the town of Kanze was under surveillance, but did not really have its life dramatically impeded by the Chinese presence. As you know, in the 1950s, it was this part of Tibet that rose in rebellion against the Chinese invasion. And so there was always surveillance and punishment, severe punishment, for anyone who might express views that were in contrast to the official policies of the state. There was always surveillance and punishment, severe punishment, for anyone who might express views that were in contrast to the official policies of the state. But at the time that we were there, everything was relatively pacific and tranquil.
I've been following the strange death of the Buddhist monk Khenpo Cho, and not too long ago, a few weeks ago, I just had this urge to go to the site and be there where the body dissolution took place. When we got to the site, we found a small village and a small monastery called the Nerong Limo Monastery, which can't be, I don't know, maybe 50 monks. Overlooking that village and monastery was a monument that was erected in recognition of his great achievement. Next to the monument is a big stupa that contains relics, including the yellow cloth that covered him when the dissolution took place. Next to the stupa is his hermitage. Now what you're looking at here is a house within a house. They built a protective structure around the original hermitage. This next picture is his bed. It's where the dissolution took place. It's so decorated it's hard to make out, but if you look closely, there toward the left center you'll see an orange pillow. The bed was maybe 4 foot wide and, I don't know, maybe 5.5 feet long. That's where he slept, and that's where he meditated.
But as we approached the monastery, I wasn't quite sure. This is an enormous structure. And I don't know if you know anything about large Tibetan monasteries, but they consist of several central buildings that are quite large. But then there is usually a village of smaller houses all around them, where individual monks and their disciples, very often relatives, their nephews, are living together and practicing and studying together under the guidance of an older monk. We reach a gate, and waiting for us mysteriously at the gate is a young man named Tashi with the classic Kampa cowboy hat. He's a young layman who is just there, as it were, waiting for us to show up. And he says, in a few words, I'll take you to the people who can help you out. And within moments, we are ushered into the presence of several of the elder monks of the community who almost immediately produce the biography, 8 chapters of the biography of the Khenpo. Well, this is pretty tremendous relief because it saves us a lot of questions and answers. And they told us some of the things that they knew about him. They didn't give us the 9th chapter. The 9th chapter was the story of his attainment of the dissolution of the material body, or the rainbow body, at the time of his death. We were advised to go across the river and meet with the nuns, because the nuns had the 9th chapter. The nuns had the 9th chapter, and we did that. But what this also illustrates is that for his brothers in the Gelugpa order, the dissolution of the body and the attainment of the rainbow body were not part of the curriculum, not part of the path, the gradual path, the Lam Rim, that is typical of that tradition. Therefore, it was not spoken about. But there was nothing about the rainbow body. This was not to be spoken about. Okay? So that the sectarian divisions are quite clear that in the Nyingma tradition, in the practice of what is called the great perfection, Dzogchen,
Dzogchen is a tradition of teachings pivotal to Nyingma, the oldest of the 4 schools of Tibetan Buddhism. Derived from the terms Dzogchen meaning perfection and Chen meaning great, the word Dzogchen implies the great perfection. This method of meditation practice advocates the primeval state of being. It stresses the complete awareness and the maintaining of this natural and pure state when one achieves an innately primal or luminous mind. Dzogchen deemed as the ultimate and surest path among the 9 vehicles that lead to emancipation, which is the Tibetan Buddhist practice that is said to give rise to the rainbow body phenomenon. Now, the supposed remarkable ability to dissolve one's physical body into a luminous form marked by energies of pure light is one that entails relentless years of meditation, practice, and nurturing of loving thoughts among others.
Dzogchen.
So Dzogchen, what they say in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Dzogchen, that word means the natural primordial state of our being. And all their teachings and meditations are aimed at achieving this condition of Dzogchen. They call it the pure, all-encompassing primordial clarity, and they say that this is the true nature of all beings. This is timeless and it has no form, and yet it is the nature of the universe. So they really, really stress that it's just empty awareness. They use the term empty awareness all the time in describing this, or at least that's how it translates. A timeless clarity that has no form of its own. This is the source of all the universe.
Dzogchen.
And yet it is capable of perceiving, experiencing, reflecting, or expressing all form. And it does so without being affected by those forms in any ultimate, permanent way. It is like a mirror which reflects with complete openness but is not affected by the reflections.
But it doesn't correspond necessarily to some of the other tantric lineages which do speak of an illusory body, which do speak of a light body, which do speak of a subtle body, but do not speak of it in terms of the dissolution of the material body. Sometimes you will see, as in the life of Milarepa, I wrote a book called Liberation in One Lifetime, which traces some of the earliest biographies and teachings of Milarepa that come down to us. In that book, you see that Milarepa was able to incinerate his own body at the time of his death. It's a symbol of the fact that Milarepa's own attainment of enlightenment was key to his practice of the heat yoga known as Dumo. Okay.
A professor from the prestigious Harvard School of Medicine named Herbert Benson led a team of researchers deep into the Himalayan mountains of Tibet with the intent of studying the monks at remote Buddhist monasteries, specifically their alleged ability to manipulate their bodies through a practice called Ji Tumo, the inner fire meditation. The results of this study were stunning, as described in Nature magazine in 1982. In a monastery in northern India, thinly clad Tibetan monks sat quietly in a room where the temperature was a chilly 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Using a yoga technique known as Ji Tumo, they entered a state of deep meditation. Other monks soaked 3 by 6 foot sheets in cold water at 49 degrees and placed them over the meditator's shoulders. For untrained people, such frigid wrappings would produce uncontrolled shivering. If body temperatures continue to drop under these conditions, death can result. But it was not long before steam began rising from the sheets. As a result of body heat produced by the monks during meditation, the sheets dried in about an hour. Further, the team documented monks spending freezing nights when temperatures would drop to 0 degrees Fahrenheit on rocky ledges high in the Himalayas, wearing nothing but cotton shawls. The monks did not huddle together or even shiver, instead sleeping through the night comfortably. Tangibly, Benson and his team found that the monks could raise the temperature of their fingers and toes by up to 17 degrees using Ji Tumo. Additionally, they could lower their metabolism during meditation by 64%. For reference, an ordinary person's metabolism drops about 10 to 15% during sleep. In other words, the monks were able to manipulate the machinations of their bodies, even to the point of being able to withstand extreme external stimuli, using their minds. One man by the name of Wim Hof spent many years mastering the Buddhist technique of Ji Tumo. He has set Guinness World Records for swimming under ice and prolonged full-body contact with ice, and holds the record for a barefoot half marathon on ice and snow. Using Tibetan Tumo and pranayama meditations, both of which employ breathing techniques, he created his own method called the Wim Hof method, which involves cold therapy, breathing, and meditation.
The Tumo heat yoga is not only to warm you when you're in a cold cave in the Himalayas, as some people have said. It's actually a method for bringing about enlightenment. This is Milarepa himself calls this the Taplam, the path of means. Right? And he has, if you read that book, you'll see some wonderful descriptions of methods for bringing that about. But the conflagration is not quite the same thing as the dissolution of the body into its atoms or into the subatomic particles of light that are claimed for the Dzogchen practitioners.
Tibet is a really amazing and beautiful place. There's lots of mountains, and they have many, many gorgeous temples. You see beautiful rainbow photographs of that here. Khenpo Achos did not die in any normal way. And this is what happened with Khenpo Achos. He noted the day that it was going to happen. He knew it was going to be that day. He was tired. And supposedly what happened is that he fell asleep in a meditation position. He was standing up. His breath stopped. His heartbeat stopped. And then what they did is they laid him out and they wrapped him in these beautiful silk cloths. And over the course of 7 days, Khenpo Achos's body shrinks down in size over the course of 7 days.
So it would have to dehydrate.
As if the essence of the body itself is being transformed. The physical structure is turning into a light body somehow.
This picture you see is pretty common on the internet, at least the left-hand side of it that shows the Khenpo. What you don't see in the internet is the man standing next to him, and his name is Lama Lobsang Nundrak, and he was the Khenpo's attendant for 21 years, student and attendant. I had the good fortune of having breakfast with Lama Lobsang, and he told me a lot about the dissolution that you don't really find on the internet. For example, he told me that in spite of what you might read, everything disappeared. Hair and nails were gone in the dissolution. He said he didn't see any rainbow light, but he reported that people did, but it was only people who were kind of far away from the site, maybe like 400 or 500 yards standing next to the monastery temple. And he also said that people in Ganzi also reported seeing lights, and I don't know, as a crow flies, Ganzi's probably only 20 miles away. He said he saw the man walk through a wall, that he was locked inside his bedroom meditating, and the next thing he knew, he was outside the bedroom, even though the door was still locked. He also told me that the monk reappeared.
People also reported having apparitions of Khenpo Achos coming to them after his death, hearing music from the room where it was taking place, seeing rainbow-colored lights over the building. Khenpo Achos started to appear to people in their dreams. They had eyewitness sightings of him, and this all was witnessed.
He also told me that the monk reappeared, that people reported seeing him circumambulate his hermitage. So he apologized. He didn't have a lot of time, and he really couldn't. I wanted more detail about the man, but he left. He got in a taxi, went back to his home, his monk's home, came back in the taxi, and he gave me a book. The book was in Tibetan. I'm currently having it translated.
So we approached the hermitage with a great deal of reverence. We were met about halfway along the trail by several nuns and lay practitioners who guided us and insisted on carrying our backpacks for us. And we arrived, we made our respectful prostrations and gathered flowers, red and yellow flowers, to put on the altars. And we were greeted at the gate. The Lama on the right is Lama Pia, who was one of our guides. And the Lama on the left is Lama Norta. He looks like a monk, but actually he's a lay practitioner. He's what you call a nakpa, or an expert in the mantras. And he was one of the close disciples and one of the eyewitnesses that we keep. And this is the chamber in which the Khenpo used to do his practices. He would sleep in the lotus position. So this little box was his space for meditation, study, and rest. The adornments and the portraits were put there by his disciples because this is the spot where he died. This is the spot where they saw at the moment of his death, when he breathed his last, that his face had changed. And in moments of his death, they see this luminous quality. The flesh becomes pink like that of a small child. The wrinkles disappear.
One of the interesting things that seems to happen in this rainbow body activation, very peculiar, is that if there's some cracks in the silk, at times there is, the skin on the face age reverses. First of all, the lines, the wrinkles go away. The skin becomes a lot younger looking and a lot newer looking.
So immediately they sent runners 50 miles to the west to consult with the Dharma brother of this Lama, whose name is Lama Akchung, who was his brother in the Dharma and in the Nyingma tradition. What do we do? And he said, cover the body with a cloth, venerate it, do your prayers and mantras and so on, all the rituals. In 8 days, there will be a Padmasambhava ceremony on the calendar. By that day, you will see what you need to see. But don't interrupt the process. Don't touch the body. Don't expose the body. Okay, so they just did that. And they could see day after day that the body of this frail elderly monk was diminishing. And there were rainbows in the sky, some of them of unusual shapes, like straight bands, or triangles, or trapezoids. And there was, at one point, a very large manifestation of light, a sphere of light in the atmosphere that was seen at a great distance. So not only by people near the hermitage, but by people at a great distance who reported about it. And there was mysterious, wordless music that could be heard. And as someone said, if anyone had a tape recorder around here, you know, it certainly wasn't coming from a tape recorder. And also the classic sign of a very gentle rain, which is called a rain of flowers. Okay, metokcha. The scent of flowers was really just a fine rain that took place at that time. So. They all reported in the interviews. I made a set of questions, a standard set of questions about what happened, and they all responded pretty consistently to the questions. Here we are interviewing Lama Piak and Lama Norta inside the hermitage over a cup of tea and some vegetables and so forth. These are the nuns, by the way, the community of nuns. When the nuns gave me the 9th chapter in their monastery, I began reading some portions of it. I can read. The Tibetans find me rather funny. They call me the Jesus Lama, because they know that I do some kind of puja, you see, the Eucharist. I celebrate the Eucharist. And they rather like this puja that I do. I like to do Gregorian chant and take my time with it, and sit in the lotus position while I'm doing it. So they call me the Jesus Lama. But they also find it rather amusing that I can't really speak Tibetan fluently, but I can read it aloud fluently. They had never known anyone that could, because normally, of course, a child grows up speaking the language and then secondarily reading it. But this child, can read it but can't speak it. Of course, as you well know, colloquial, idiomatic languages are quite different from formal, classical. It would be like I can read Shakespeare aloud, but I can't talk like an Elizabethan.
Good night, everybody.
So I'm coming home from work and I literally ran over a fucking squirrel, and I'm a vegetarian, and the baby squirrel was following the mom squirrel that I ran over, and I pulled over and I saw it was barely breathing. So I tried to give it CPR, but I didn't know how to. I had to YouTube it, and apparently you can't give CPR to squirrels, and I tried to call 911. They said they don't do that. I texted my mom asking her what I should do. She said, LOL, just come home. LOL!